The rest of them are all short-term money market instruments, taking basically advantage of your interest rate here and offshore and the forwards. So I think that's going to change dramatically once the forwards start going up. And most importantly, withholding tax, nobody pays it. Today, it's not that if you stop withholding tax, government's going to lose anything. There is no withholding tax really going to government, and you need to really stop that. So that short-term thing is bridged, and then long-term we have to look at the structural issue as to how we bring the deposit rate lower than the MIBOR.
Thanks. I am actually sitting on a very hot seat just now because I realized that lunch was long ago started, and I'm squeezing into your lunchtime. So you're going to get indigestion tonight because we have forced you to have a quick lunch. His basic point seems to be that we need to have participant focus, and he said participant focus must be real. We need to get real about introducing a larger spectrum of players compared to what we have on the ground. We may put numbers of participants down, but that's not real. The question is who's actually trading in the marketplace, and that's pathetically few. And retail participation is of course one way to encourage a wider heterogeneous diversity of views, but also you have FIIs. And FIIs have got several layers that are banked against them in terms of participation. So we have had a series of points that come from here in terms of just the market forces, that we have learned how to do good markets and good market liquidity. Remember, we're talking about secondary market trading liquidity, and we've learned how to do that in other sectors of finance. Why can we not use some of those learnings a lot more and a lot faster in the debt market as compared to what we've done so far? Perhaps one of the things that we haven't really touched upon is that debt market really does not have an owner. There's no regulator for the debt market. Okay, de facto, RBI is regulator of banks, and banks are the largest participants in debt market, and therefore de facto they are regulated. But debt market is a baby that's out there crying for a mommy, and corporate bond market has got SEBI that has taken it over. But the corporate bond market is a thin sliver by definition anywhere. If you don't have a vibrant, deep securities markets from the government side, then you can't have a really great corporate debt market. So it needs a regulatory focus. It needs participation to be wider. It needs products to be simpler. And perhaps given that I'm going to talk about inflation as a real problem that really no one talks about, and it's a critical issue for how you develop the bond market. Because you do need instruments to hedge interest rate risk, even more so today in the last 2 or 3 years as compared with before. Before we could have said, okay, everything is calm and peaceful because we don't have this kind of inflation, we don't have interest rate volatility. Now we are being beaten by both. So I think it's of concern that we don't have interest rate instruments that people can trust and use. Don't come to me saying that, okay, I have an OIS market, but hey, the rates there are lower than the government of India market. I just don't believe that. Okay, there's something fake there. Mr. Ravikumar wants to have 2 more things to say, and so I hand over the floor to him. But I do want 2 minutes.
Jayesh made. In respect of the participants in the whole segment, there may be 37 traders, but they are not traders. They are participants because they don't trade at all. You need, if I can name, the SMC in commodities, the JP Capital in United Stock Exchange, or the Prithviraj Kothari in gold. You need people who are not from the institutional setup, who are large, who are willing to take views, and they are the ones who provide you the opposite view. Today all are on the same side, so there is no price discovery. The second is in respect of the bond market, HTM, the point Sandeep made. Actually, I am completely opposed to that. There should be no HTM even in government of India securities. Today most banks move their entire portfolio into HTM because they don't have to mark it to market. Actually, it is counterproductive to the development of a debt market. There should be a cap as to how much of government of India securities should be moved into HTM. It should not be more than 15-20% of the total holding.
Right, so these are our views, mixed as they are. Can we get some views from the floor? I'll open it up for two questions in 2 minutes. Nothing more, nothing less. Yes, the lady there in the pink shirt.
Hi. I have actually a little bit of comment to make. Initially, you mentioned something on the OIS and GSEC spread. I think structurally, possibly we're the only, not the only, well, maybe one of the very few economies that have a positive spread. And I tried studying that a while back. Is that because the funding costs are a lot higher as opposed to, let's say, a country like US where LIBOR is practically nothing? That's my first question. I mean, I just want a clarification on it. And the second one is, Mr. Mehta spoke of the FII, investment in debt, with the withholding tax being a very, very, a crucial deterrent. If something is done, again, if there's a regulatory step which is conducive for FII investment in debt, what about issues like MTM, say, their call on interest rates? Because we typically have not seen FIIs coming in with an interest rate view. It's largely more of a currency call that they come with.
So if I may take that second point, I don't think that you can split currency and keep interest rates out of the picture, because you've got your trinity, right? You've got the currency and you've got interest rate in country one and country two.
No, that's okay, but they usually do not take a duration risk. Predominantly they don't. They typically invest in,
which comes back.
Of the pension fund coming in equity buying with a 20-year view, he's not going to continuously go on hedging for 20 years. That's out of question. Same way, he is also taking currency view when he's talking, world is talking about 2020, India becoming 2020 or 2050 or whatever, right? He's buying a 50-year bond. He's also looking at appreciation in rupees in next 15 to 20 years. That's why I didn't talk about hedge funds. That's why I didn't talk about mutual fund or something. I talked about pension fund or an insurance company from US. So that's the kind of investors we actually want in debt market, who bring diversity to the bond market. And but because of the nuances which we have, which is not earning anything for the government, it is actually stopping them.
And as to your first question about what causes that spread, it's a good question. It ought to be researched, and that's what we're doing. Only one observation I can make that I can put numbers down to is that both markets are being driven by totally different segments of participants.
I'll just add to that.
Yeah.
If you look at even the US market, the spreads were negative, that is, OIS was higher than treasuries, used to be, but not this year. And one of the reasons, I'm not saying that's the only reason, one of the reasons is government bond supply. So the supply of the government bond is much, much higher, and that's why the spreads are widening and getting negative. And same thing happened in US, which used to be, typically if you look at last 10 years average, used to be around 30 basis points. OIS were higher than the treasury, but now it's negative.
But I mean, we are consistently lower than treasury.
We have been consistently borrowing.
Consistent. I mean, that's weird.
No.
Okay, I mean, I get freaked out by the rates, but my panelists obviously are not. So I'll hear this, but we'll do this over lunch. Thank you very much. I just wanted to do one summary of, if I can, in a line. We often in the country talk like we want a first world debt market, but we behave like a central planning debt market. So it really, the recommendations of how to make this debt market work is out there. It's been out there for the last 15 years. Every 2 years we come up with a report which has got slightly different language, but the recommendations appear to be the same. Okay, and I think that what we really need is, if we are going to be central planner and central economy driver, the central planner needs to pick up those reports and just implement it. And it's all out there, and if you want to get specifics on how to order it, I'm sure each of us has our views, and we can do this over lunch. Thank you very much.